Martin Scorsese's The Irishman screened for the first time on Friday at the New York Film Festival. The initial consensus is that the film is a hit, a poignant work of art that harks back to classic Scorsese mob movies and also explores new territories. The critics have been all over it, and so have normal moviegoers, praising the cast, the story, the direction, amongst many elements. Rotten Tomatoes have an interesting page where they collate the reviews of the film, and they've taken out sections of each review and put them into a category. One say about the CGI, one about Al Pacino, one about how good the overall film is, etc, etc. So here's what the critics are saying about the film. Has Scorsese got another gangster masterpiece on his hands? One critic said, "It's the film that I think a lot of us wanted to see from Scorsese, rippling with echoes of the director's previous mob films, but it also takes us someplace bold and new." Another critic said, "This is Scorsese's least sentimental picture of the mob life, and for that reason, his most poignant." And another critic said, "Scorsese is at the top of his game." Rotten Tomatoes' next question is, so it's not just another Goodfellas wannabe? One critic says, "The Irishman is Martin Scorsese's best crime movie since Goodfellas, an ideal match of filmmaker and source material." Another says, "This is not Goodfellas, this is not Casino, this is Scorsese at his most reflective, crafting a masterwork that finds the filmmaker reflecting on everything he's done and what it's all amounted to." And another critic said, "It's moving in a way Goodfellas is not. An old man could not have made that movie, just as a younger one couldn't have made this one. Is it reminiscent of any other movie?" One critic says, "The Irishman reminded me a bit of Unforgiven. It feels at least like a critical eulogy for an era of crime fiction that Scorsese and De Niro and Pacino built." Another said, "There are aspects of The Irishman that recall David Lynch's work on The Return." One said, "With stories within stories within stories, The Irishman is a little like a mob movie version of Inception." And finally, another critic said, "Move over Braveheart, move over Air Force One, move over Field of Dreams, Gladiator, The Right Stuff, Ben freaking Hur. The Irishman could well be dad movie of the century." How are Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci? One critic says, "De Niro is in top form. He hasn't been this good in years, and his rather understated performance really carries the movie." Another says, "Frank Sheeran gives De Niro his most satisfying role in years." One critic says, "De Niro's superb performance is a close cousin to his work in Goodfellas." Another said, "What a joy it is to have Pesci back on the screen and to see him deliver such soulful work in the process. The film really belongs to Pesci." And another critic said, "Joe Pesci emerges from retirement to give a superbly measured performance, the polar opposite of the lit fuse firecracker Pesci famously portrayed for Scorsese." And when they're together is the next Rotten Tomato question. De Niro and Pacino play off one another beautifully, with De Niro often playing the calm, straight man to Pacino's loudmouth comedian. A warmth radiates between the two. And another said, "When Pesci and De Niro are on screen together, you believe in the power of art." What about Al Pacino? One critic says, "Pacino arrives almost a third of the way into the film and instantly electrifies it." Another said, "Pacino shines amongst an incredible cast. It's his best display of rampant emotion and thoughtful characterization since Heat. He is Hoffa." Another added, "More than just a believably magnetic Hoffa, Pacino kicks the film into the realm of pure, delicious crazy." And one said, "Pacino's over-the-top presence borders on parody, but at the same time feels attuned to the larger-than-life shadow that Hoffa cast in his prime." Rotten Tomatoes' next question is, how distracting is the de-aging effect? One critic says, "Is the de-aging process perfect? Of course not. The process is still amazing, and there's a strange, singular way that it works for the movie." Another said, "The de-aging is pretty good. I'd say the best I've seen so far. You do get used to it." One said, "The eyes adjust to the illusion. Moreover, this magic trick speaks to the unreliable unreality of memory itself." a problem with potentially accidental resonance. One said, after a while you adjust, or rather you get tired of probing the slightly off evidence of your eyes and the headache it produces. There's a lot of fun to distract you. And one critic said, now and then I have to starve off a PTSD flashback to Robert Zemeckis' Polar Express. What about the runtime? The film, which clocks in at 209 minutes, even longer than The Return of the King and Avengers Endgame, barely feels its length. One critic said, this is a remarkably brisk 3.5 hours. Scorsese, at a ripe 76, still directs with the energy of a hungry young filmmaker. One critic said, the material would have been better served by losing an hour or more to run at standard feature length, or bulking up on supporting character and plot detail to flesh out a series. Another said, I'm not sure The Irishman needed all 209 minutes. Even when the characters are younger, it moves at a leisurely or even elderly pace. How's the pacing? Its last half hour, one critic said, is deeply moving in a way that creeps up on you, and it's then that you see what Scorsese was working toward all along. One critic says, The Irishman doesn't fully engage until its second act. Another said, Zelane's messy script, an ambitious assemblage of timelines, takes its time to fully immerse the viewer into its world. The second half is more lively. And another critic said, it's a film that only gets further under your skin after you leave the theatre or close your Netflix browser, as the case may be. The next question is, does it need to be seen in a theatre? One critic says, the film by design is episodic in a way that's small screen friendly. One critic says, the movie's self-indulgent running time of 3.5 hours will pose challenges for home screen viewing. And one says, it should go without saying, but yes, if you can, definitely see a new Martin Scorsese movie on the big screen first. The next question is, what about the film's female characters? One critic says, if one fault could be found with Scorsese's latest work, it's the waste of intruding women characters. And another says, for much of The Irishman, the women are at the margins, wives and daughters, always around, rarely saying anything. This isn't atypical in Scorsese's work, which rarely centers on women. Another critic said, the movie lacks a strong female voice, but such limitations speak to Sheeran's character flaws more than those of The Irishman. And finally, Rotten Tomatoes say, it's a shoo-in for the Oscars though, isn't it? In terms of the Oscar race, The Irishman is what we thought it was, a likely Best Picture contender with a chance at a truckload of nominations, says one critic. And another says, if the Best Supporting Actor came down to Pacino and Pesci, I have no idea who'd I support. Both performances are transcendently good. All in all then, it does look like we have another Scorsese mob movie masterpiece on our hands. It's been touted as a serious Best Picture Oscar contender, and the acting from all the veteran actors has received high praise. It's really cool how, in particular, everyone seems to be singling out Pacino as the star of the show. And as I put it many times previously, he would really need to show us energy and vigour in the role of Jimmy Hoffa that we haven't seen in years from the 79-year-old. And yet, somehow he's managed to pull it off, as have done the rest of the cast. It's De Niro's best performance in years, understandably, as this project was his baby from day one. And Pesci's nuanced and measured role has taken many by surprise given his fame in shouty roles. The Irishman will now begin hitting select cinemas around the world and will be released on Netflix on November the 27th. Thanks for watching.